Welcome to the Nordic Mythology podcast. I'm Daniel Farrand, owner of the company Horns of Odin. As always, before we start the show, I do have to give a shout out to our Patreon. It's how we keep the podcast going. I say it every week. It's the lifeline of the show. We have no other funding source other than Patreon. So that really is just how we're able to edit the episodes, do the social media, do everything that we do. So it really is vital. So if you can pop over to Patreon/Nordic Mythology Podcast, have a look on there. You get a bonus episode every week in the form of a Q&A. You get the access to our Discord channel with all the lovely other patrons. There's a lovely community. I say lovely a lot. There's a community of people over there that are very lovely people. You get early access. You get any bonus episodes we're doing in the future. We're in the works of trying to do smutty literature. We're just trying to work out the copyright behind it of how we can read smutty literature on a podcast, but we'll get there. We're working on it. That's about it. It starts from £3 a month, so it's like buying me or Mags a cup of coffee, especially with the Starbucks prices. Yeah, shots fired at Starbucks.
Try finding one for just £3 these days.
I know. I went to Starbucks. It was like £4 something the other day, and I was just like, it's upsetting me now.
I don't think I've paid less than like £5 or the equivalent
Norway,
of
though.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, you are. It's expensive over there for anything.
True.
True.
But yeah, if you can, then just a 5-star rating, positive review wherever you get your podcast, like and share, hit the bell and subscribe on YouTube. All those little things do help. They help new people find the podcast. But let's get into today's show. That lovely voice is our in-house archaeologist, the lovely Mags Havgar.
Hello, everyone. I feel like I say this every episode, but for this episode is particularly true that I'm so excited for the topic today.
Yeah, this one's right up your wheelhouse. Up your wheelhouse? In your wheelhouse?
I'm not sure that's an expression, Dan. No.
Right. What is it? In your wheelhouse?
I think one can be in one's wheelhouse.
It's right in my textile house.
How today is going, it's up your wheelhouse. I'm sticking with it. They're my choice of words. And so that lovely voice, correcting me nice and early on there, is Nicole DeRushie. Nicole is returned to the podcast. Nicole is a museum educator and independent researcher focused on late prehistoric fibercraft and tailoring. Her aim is to bring this topic to a wider audience through engagement online, in person, and through her recent book, Bog Fashion. Bog Fashion explores what we learn when we study bog preserved textiles and offers 13 make-at-home projects inspired by the Bronze and Iron Ages.
Sounds good when you say it like that, Dan.
It does, yeah. No, it is good. You very kindly sent me a copy. I have it here.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my God, I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yay. Fantastic. We can talk, Mags, after the broadcast. Okay.
Don't mind if we do.
Getting a copy these days seems to be the real challenge.
Ooh, good for you, Nicole.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, has it done well? When did it? Because it came out not too long ago, right?
No, it didn't come out long ago at all. About a month ago, and with our wonderful Kickstarter supporters having bought so many copies in our pre-sale, we have sold out, and we are now patiently awaiting our second edition. So that is going to be coming out in June. Watch all available spaces for details. It's very exciting and humbling to see how quickly that happened. But I know that our retail partners and also people who want to buy independently online are waiting patiently for us to restock, and that will be happening in the coming weeks.
Oh, that's so good. I did open mine really excitedly, expecting to see a lovely note and a signature in there, but it failed to be in there, Nicole. I don't know what happened.
Because it didn't come direct from me, unfortunately. It had to come from Sweden. So next time you and I are in the same building, somebody find a pen. We'll sort you out.
Wow. Dan, you're like, your head is, you're getting a bit...
No, I got called out, didn't I? Am I up the wheelhouse?
Yeah. But also be like, I'm a podcaster, actually. I got this sent specifically from our guests. So where's my thank you note, you know?
Yeah. No, I didn't want to thank you. No, I just expected
You just expected it to be there.
Enjoy the ball. No, I didn't expect anything. I only thought of it right now because I was like, what thing can I say to kind of get back?
I love it.
I'm only kidding. So you did it through Kickstarter?
We had a little bit of a delay in our publishing of the book, and we thought that a really good way to keep momentum high, keep interest really high, and to give people the opportunity to pre-order at a discount and just show their love and support for the project would be to create a Kickstarter, which we did that launched September 1st, 2024. And all that we wanted to do with the Kickstarter at that time was to cover a portion of our production costs through pre-sales. And we entirely covered our production costs within 2 hours of it opening. So it really was overwhelming, that level of support. So we were able to put in new fundraising goals to sweeten the pot, as it were, for people to come and support us. So we have a few other
signed.
No, but we do have upcoming. We do have upcoming in early June a Kickstarter supporter only Q&A session.
Nice.
Details to come shortly about that. And then we've also had some other smaller publishing projects which are underway currently that our supporters who pledged at that level will be receiving before anyone else gets a look in. So a few sweet treats coming for people who were very patient and supported us right from the beginning. Yeah.
I love that. It's not easy to make a book. It's expensive. It's so much more expensive than you think it would be.
Oh my goodness. It's so true. And I think you just don't know, like, where do you even begin? How do you make a book? And so to have the support of Chronocopia and their expertise in this field really was a lifesaver. I could never have done a fraction of what we've accomplished today without their expertise and support. So yay Chronocopia. Thank you very much.
So is it printed in Sweden?
No, it's where was it? I think it was Lithuania.
Oh, okay.
It is actually printed. There's a small printing company that uses slightly older machines that produce a really high quality physical book, and it's who they publish through. It's a great partnership. They make really, really lovely things, and that's really big for me. I wanted it to be a high quality book, the kind of book where you can thumb through it for years and you have no concern about that spine cracking or anything like that. I want a book that's made to be used, and this really feels that way.
This is so embarrassing. I'm gonna say it anyway because I'm always one to embarrass myself. When you held your copy up, then I was gonna say, is that in softback? Because I've got a hardback one, you've got a paperback one, and I was like, softback doesn't quite sound right. I wonder what this is.
No, mine's a hard copy as well. It's how we do the book right, is to have it hardbound. Yeah.
Oh, are they all hardback?
Oh yeah.
I would assume that a book like this wouldn't necessarily need a paperback / pocket edition because of the intended use for it. Or am I wrong?
No, that's a really good point. I think, what I would love to see is a spiral bound version, something that really lays flat on the table where you put it, kind of thing. But this one actually sits open really nicely. I think just the weight of that hardback. If you think about a cookbook, you generally want that to be a heavier book as well for the same reason. And as it is the second in the series, with Daniel Serra's An Early Meal being the first now in that series that Chronocopia is developing, you can really see how a cookbook and this one have a lot of the same needs and really suit the same format.
Yeah, it's a nice sturdy thing.
Definitely.
I love hearing you guys like flipping the pages and everything. Just like
it is this
auditory
ASMR.
Yes.
It's all about
ASMR
that.
for me, the bibliophile.
Yes, absolutely.
I can listen to that for ages.
All right, everyone, no more talking. We're just going to flip pages.
We're just going to flip pages.
Perfect.
That's all it is. The next hour and a half, just I was going to try and make a flipping page noise, but I could have just done it with the book, couldn't I? I don't know. I'm all over the place.
You know what? A for effort, Dan, and then we won't talk about the execution.
Oh, yeah. So I have a little story if we want to hear it before the podcast.
Absolutely.
Or before we get into the book or after. Before we get... So
yeah, let's do it.
I had this lined up for last week, but obviously we couldn't do the episode last week. I accidentally joined a Viking dating group on Facebook.
Okay, what?
Accidentally?
And it is...
How did you slip on a banana peel? How did that?
It is everything you hope this place would be. So,
I don't know what that means either, but okay.
It's just the best and worst place on earth. So I joined loads of Facebook groups.
Hang on, before you start, I literally, in our little break trying to get this to work today, the episode, I literally made myself some popcorn. So I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to be eating popcorn while you tell the story, Dan.
I've got popcorn envy now.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
So I joined a lot of Facebook groups for the podcast because it's just good for I just posted, I spam in there once or twice a week with the different episodes, with the guests, just trying, because some of these groups, they have 100,000 people in. So even if I can pick up a couple of them who want to come and listen and just try and put something back into some of the cesspits that are some Facebook groups. And there was one, it's called Vikings and Shield Maidens. Maybe I could have got it from the name. I don't know. But they do make you tick the little boxes on entry. And I think I haven't quite read something. I've just ticked it and gone, yeah, whatever. So I'm in the group and I've been in there for a while now. And every post seems to be I don't want to hate on Americans, but seems to be somebody from America that has painted runes on their face.
Classic.
It's a guy with a beard and he's stood with his camera facing it and it's just introducing myself. My name's so-and-so. I'm from thing. My ancestors are from Norway. That typical kind of post. And it's all the time. And sometimes you get a shirt. It's mainly guys posting, but sometimes you get a shirtless guy. He's taking a picture and he's ripped. And he's just introducing myself. My name's so-and-so. I'm from Iceland. And I'm this is a bit weird, this group. But, occasionally there's knowledge-based posts, history posts. They're not very accurate, but they're there. And so I just keep going. And then there's some lady posts of, that's lady post. Women posts.
Some shield maiden, I think you mean, Dan.
Some shield maidens posting. And they're, you know what? They're typically from England and they look exactly how you expect them to look. I'm not going to go into it anymore. But they're taking a picture, posting it, and they're just what
does that mean?
Well, you know what it means. You know what it means. I'm not, and they're in the mirror and they're taking a picture and they're just introducing myself, and I'm why are all these people just introducing
themselves?
Yeah, I'm why is everyone just introducing themselves in this group? And then on one of them I commented, I was is this a dating group? And someone was yeah, you had to click the thing on the way in. I was
oh my God, Dan.
So I've just been hovering around in this dating group for a while, judging everybody. But I would also say join the group because it is brilliant. It is, you know what? There are some really there are some assholes in this group as well. Some people.
Wow, I am shook to the core
They're
of my soul.
They're often
yeah. So there are. If you're good looking, you get a good response. If you're not good looking,
Obviously.
which I would say 95% of the people I wouldn't say are the best looking people. And
they are just maybe we could go by. They're just regular people looking.
I think that's maybe a bit kind.
Dan's just introducing myself post, frankly.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe we should make just introducing ourselves post, not to post anywhere, but just to do it.
Just introducing. So some of them are very mean. Some people are very mean, and I thought maybe there's a lot of people in this group that are probably not pro queer. I think is some of it. I think some of them are really so they are. It is quite uncomfortable at times when I've kind of realized. So I would like to call the group out as being a bit of a shithole as a whole, because it doesn't seem to have any admins, which I think is a big problem.
That could be.
But on a comical side, aside from that kind of bit, it was hilarious.
Flavor, shall we say?
Yeah, it's fun to go in there and laugh at the people who probably do take themselves very serious, and are probably, I would say, the people who have these, let's just say, bad opinions. I would say they tend to be the ones who are actually posting, though, and you can get a good laugh at them, so it's worth it. But I would definitely go check out Vikings and Shield Maidens group on Facebook, because
as a disclaimer, do so at your own risk.
Yeah, I love that. I can see those opinions without going anywhere near Facebook group.
Same.
They somehow they find me somehow.
Yeah.
So
I'm right with
your
you
finger
there.
on the pulse of certain political.
Nicole, yeah, I feel like I thank you for the recommendation, Dan, and I love that you made us aware of it. And now I don't ever need to place my cursor in any vicinity near this group.
Well, as I think that whilst I maybe did a disservice, because whilst there might be some unsavory comments, for the most part, what I've seen is that there are a hell of a lot more people who say that's not how not how you behave. That's not how Vikings behave. That's not. So I think it is fair that I do share that as well. That it is. Yeah. There are a lot of people who do call it out, and they will make posts after, and there is that kind of moral side to it. Even though the admins don't really do a good job, there is some morality within the users. So
it seems to be self-policing kind of thing.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the other stuff, I guess, gets through. But it is a fun place to just kind of realize that you're accidentally in a dating Facebook group. It's just
something that's never happened to me, Dan. I've never accidentally found myself on a dating. Weird, right? I mean,
I will also say, as far as I can recall, I have also never found myself accidentally.
Why are we all playing the?
No, but it's more than that. It's like I will 100% admit that I have found myself in, interpersonal, communicative, real life situations where some people have been putting out vibes that I did not pick up on. That's a different thing. But joining a Facebook group is a different thing entirely.
I just accidentally downloaded Tinder. I didn't know what it was.
I just thought it was a place where you go learn about how to, make bonfires and stuff.
You just saw a long queue and joined the end of it, Dan, right?
Yeah. You know what? I was just a chatty guy. All right, let's get into Bog Fashion.
Okay.
Where do we start? Because I noticed, I don't know if this is on purpose, Nicole, that actually the very first example that you bring up is based in Rylstone Craven in Yorkshire.
That's right.
So I don't know if that was on purpose, just to be flattery for when you next came back on to talk about it, because that is Yorkshire is a great place.
Yorkshire is a lovely place, and every time I've visited, I have felt lovely, warm, fuzzy feelings for the place.
We're the kind of people who don't know we're in dating groups. That's the kind of people we are in Yorkshire. That's how kind of friendly we are. We're just friendly people who accidentally put ourselves in there.
That's the 2025 updated version of the four Yorkshiremen. They don't know they're in a dating group. It was not on purpose, actually, to have chosen that. I chose it because by accident, really. I wanted to see what Bronze or Iron Age textiles were in the collections of the Ashmolean Museum where I work. And it turned out that tiny fragment that you see in that beginning section was the only British textile of that period, of that very large period, that exists in the collection. And so my options were slightly limited then, and as to what I took a look at, it happened to be from Yorkshire, this piece. But actually looking into it, to go and to work with Sue, who was the textiles conservator there, to take a look at it, and really no one had properly looked at it before, properly photographed it using really fancy cameras, spent some time with it. It actually turned out to tell a really interesting story. And I think it was a useful introduction to the subject, considering that archaeological remains of textiles are so rare and so precious, that even what would seem at first to be an insignificant fragment actually can tell so much, can add so much to what's really a very fragmentary picture of the period. And this particular fragment, which there are other fragments from the same grave, it's not the only bit from this textile, but taken together with the context of its burial, actually radically altered or radically complicated the picture of grave traditions and weaving traditions in the region for that period, especially as it was the very latest Bronze Age. Textiles from that particular transitional period between the Bronze and Iron Age are particularly rare, as cremation became more and more common as a funerary practice. So when we do get anything from that period, it's very, very important.
Yeah, I guess, do we still get items from cremation when it comes to like iron and other, I guess, artifacts? I assume that they're not burning hot enough to melt the iron down.
I mean, we certainly do. My specialty isn't on the sort of hardware necessarily that's found in graves, but no, certainly we do, and also people will then once a person's been cremated, then add in other grave goods to that cremated mixture, I suppose, of whatever went on to the pyre with the individual originally. And even in the case of where perhaps a brooch or something like that has gone into the fire, just being sort of carbonized and oxidized onto the back of a piece of metal quite often is the way that we do preserve something of the fabric. We could never tell the whole structure of a garment by a few sort of microns of fiber stuck or sort of fused onto the back of a piece of metal. But what you could do is at least understand a little bit of the spin pattern, the weave pattern, the gauge of the weave, things like that, which tell you things like the quality of the fabric that's being used there. If there's a variety of types of fabric layered into that place, you might have multiple loops, multiple layers of fabric preserved a little bit there. Yeah, but you're not getting a full picture. It's really, you're looking through a keyhole there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that image, saying that it's like looking through a keyhole.
Yeah.
Because it kind of also like opens the doors into what kind of techniques were employed, which then again could be used to extrapolate perhaps what types of tools or technology was available.
Definitely.
But yeah.
And perhaps even who's trading with who, because cloth has since forever in the history of cloth been a really good trade good, and you can see connections across places. When you do even have fragmentary bits and pieces, you can under the right conditions study the origins of a piece 100%. Of fabric as well.
I thought I'd just also add on that, like, Dan, this is not my field of expertise either, but I also know that from cremation burials you can have bits and pieces like fragments of ceramics, pretty much anything that isn't very soft organic material could potentially survive in a somewhat fragmented form, depending on what we're talking about.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I meant, was that when you have those cremations, it's got to be a nightmare for anything organic. So for somebody interested in textiles, as soon as cremations become popular, you're a little bit screwed, because at least with other stuff you can have some stuff survives.
I think the country with the most extensive records of the textiles found in a grave context in prehistory is Denmark by a long margin. And trying to just remember this one statistic that over 140 graves from the Bronze and Iron Ages have been found with recognizable textiles in them.
God damn, That's a lot.
So, excuse me, not of Iron Age, of Bronze Age. But of the Bronze Age burials, only 10 of those finds have been from the end of the period, due in large part to cremation coming in as the most popular funerary mode. And where they are discovered, they're very poor, they're very fragmentary, they're almost incidental, accidental.
Right.
So you're not going to learn the same as you would by taking a look at Trintoyman or any of the really famous, more complete textile finds from much earlier in the period when inhumation was really the done thing.
When it comes to textiles, and I guess in particular clothing, is it through burials where we get most cases of fragments, finds? Can it just, because I guess people are buried with maybe an item of clothing, the one that they're wearing, maybe like a blanket, I guess, depending on their affluence. But there's a lot of textiles outside of that. Do we ever find ones that are just lost? Or I don't know, like in other ways, I guess.
Yeah, we certainly do. Loss is an interesting concept. We do certainly get what we would believe to be purposeful deposits of clothing into boggy places, just as you might sink some coins or an axe head or a brooch or a human being into the bog as an offering to appease or to please some power that is. And
wouldn't it be nice if they were actually just thinking about, in a Blue Peter sense, of making a time capsule, and they just understood that this bog preserved things, and it was like, let's put stuff in there that maybe people in 1,000 years, 2,000 years would really like to see.
Well, people, that's the wonderful thing about it, is that people did absolutely understand that these were environments that preserved what went into them. You know, they certainly would have found animals that drowned in a bog that came up almost fresh. Maybe not quite, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But there would have been long history of mishap and accident and intention within the bog landscape that later people in prehistory would have recognized. But we also have these wonderful incidents of intentional use of the bog environment for preservation. And the one that I'm particularly thinking of here, and particularly in Ireland, is the finding of bog butter, where you have these butter. Yeah. So you have these wooden or bark containers that were packed full of butter that were then sunk into the bog, basically like a refrigerator, and you're going to keep that in there. And because it's a cold anaerobic environment, you're going to preserve that very valuable fat for later use. Hundreds of pots of bog butter have been found in Irish bogs, and I understand, though I can't say I'm one of them, they're still edible. Apparently, according to those who were brave enough to try. But I'm sure it gave a really complex flavor.
Yeah,
I'd assume so. But oh my gosh, I love examples like that so much, because it really goes to show how differently and ingeniously people have interacted with their environment throughout time.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you remove the oxygen from the situation, as sinking something into a bog does, it's really good. It's really good for preserving things. And similar techniques are used in certain food preservation methods today. Nothing's really changed.
Famously, sous vide is just
exactly right. Absolutely right. I'm from Canada, and in French Canada, there are these butter pots that basically you invert a little pot of butter into water, so that you're taking the air away from the surface of the butter, so that you don't need to refrigerate it. It's a really old, clever bit of crockery that you'll see in French Canadian kitchens. So yeah, the idea has never gone away. It's possible that some of those containers of bog butter were put in as offerings, certainly. But in other cases, it could have just been where you keep your butter. And and they just got
In the
lost, or
bog.
they perhaps slid or sunk out of sight, or the community moved on and didn't bring everything with them. Lots of bog butter still in Irish
Wow.
bogs today. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd eat bog butter.
I don't. I
And
think
I eat some questionable things.
given the opportunity to try,
Oh yeah,
I might have to.
Yeah,
I might have to.
Honestly, because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, you know what? I think it would entirely depend on, of course, being in a situation where that was even an opportunity that I would have.
That's it.
But,
exactly.
Yeah. But then the other would be the smell. And I'm not trying to say here that it would smell bad or anything, but I think whether or not I would be tempted to try would depend on the smell, because I personally
and the
just
color.
well, not necessarily for me, but like I've tasted a bunch of different types of butter over the years, and I've noticed that I just, for some reason, this is something I've done like an unofficial little study of for my personal taste.
I love that.
Okay.
But I'm like, there are certain types of butter that I just don't vibe with, that I think has something to do with like the type of fat or the amount of it, that it just gets kind of gamey and weird in my mouth. So I think it would depend on, and sometimes I'm able to pick out whether or not that will be the case based on the smell. So I think it would, well, maybe now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I would try it even still, just to be able to say, I don't like.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I had.
How
it
many
once.
people?
It was terrible.
Yeah.
How many
Do not
people can say-
recommend.
Stars. Yeah.
I imagine not many people can say they had bog butter, but you guys have that caramelly cheesy thing,
Oh
don't you, Max?
yes.
What's that
Caramelly
called?
cheesy thing. Oh,
Do you
prime?
mean the way?
The one that you put on.
Oh yeah, I know what
waffles.
you're talking.
It's like
Yeah.
boiled down whey, isn't it?
I think so. It's like a really sweet, heavy cheese, isn't it? Am I wrong with that?
Here's the thing. I know exactly what we're talking about, but I don't know how to.
You don't know how to say it in English.
It's called prime, and it is a mild, sweet, and caramelly like. It's just called a spread.
It's delicious.
Yeah, it's called
really heavy though, isn't it?
a sweet spread.
You
Yeah.
want it in small amounts. It's really nice.
Mhm.
I used
brown
to
cheese. That's it.
Brown cheese.
Yeah,
cheese.
it's from brown cheese, I think, originally. I used to eat a shit ton of it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then when I moved out and I had my own adult money, I was like, oh my God, I haven't had prime in ages. I want to see what that's like. Because also, like, my parents would be like, okay, easy on the layering here. We could do like a, like a smaller, like thinner layer of prime, because like it costs money. We don't need to eat it all. And so I remember I bought a pack once and I ate like so much of it to the point where I was like, oh my God, this is too sweet now. I can't.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's
that's
very heavy and sweet, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if I would call it heavy, but then at the same time, I'm raised in this culinary context, so I don't think I would be the right person to pass judgment on whether or not, because it's like a part of like we all have like Marmite or Vegemite. I'm like, why would you eat tar?
It's a lactose intolerant person's nightmare. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely,
100%. You could not do that to yourself.
But
no.
but kind of on that note of like having the opportunity to recreate an experience of old timiness, let's say.
Good segue.
Hey, thank you. I've been thinking about it for a minute. What was kind of your what is with that laugh, Dan? Excuse me.
I was just really proud of you, Max, for that. I was like, yeah, nice.
Even when I tried to be professional, we just derailed the fact that
we're silly goose today. We had
are
fun
silly
before.
geese.
Yeah, we're geese. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for correcting me again. I'm joking.
But what was the initial? I'm trying to get back on track so hard.
I appreciate you, Mags.
Thank you, Nicole. What was the initial spark behind the book? Like, was it always planned to be what it became, or did it start at something else and then kind of organically form? Or
yeah, I mean, the book is where a number of sort of threads, and I'm going to probably carry on using textile metaphors, I hope no one minds too
Please
much.
make all of the textile puns you can. I love doing that.
Put a twist on it. Anyway,
Yeah.
Lots of different sort of life threads came together for me in this book, because I've been a fiber crafter for a really long time, and for as long as I can remember, I've been really into historical fiber craft. I've been a hand spinner for a really long time, dabbling with weaving, dabbling with dyeing, some other sort of techniques. I really enjoy hand stitching. It's been something that I've done for a really long time. My first degrees was in medieval studies and looking very specifically at people's lifeways in connection to landscape and really, sort of niche stuff like that. At the same time, as a trained educator, as a forest school leader, and a bushcraft instructor, I've always had a real passion for the connection between people and landscapes historically, where people have found the means of living in the environment around them. And of course, a huge part of that is fiber, is how do we make string? How do we clothe ourselves? How do we survive the winter? How do we meet all of our basic needs essentially through the things that we can get our hands on for free in the landscape that we're living in, but also through trade connections with the people in our immediate surrounds as well. I think while I began my sort of educational path in the medieval period, my interest since then has really gone backwards in time, quite far. But as a fiber crafter, I kind of screeched to a halt in the Bronze Age, just because that's when textile really took over from skins in terms of how we clothe ourselves. So that seemed to be a really sensible starting place for this book. As for the actual text itself, I was in more sort of mainstream education while also running a forest school. I had lots and lots of hats on. I was burning out, and
that sounds like a lot. To be fair,
there was quite a lot going on. I really wanted a sort of professional reset, and something that I've wanted to do for a really long time was to move over into more sort of museum and heritage education. I was also doing all of this fiber crafting, etc., sort of on my own, researching on my own in my spare time as my passion. It was what I wanted to do. So I thought, let's see if these different things can come sort of together. So I went back to university, did a second master's degree in public history, and as a part of that degree, this was at Royal Holloway, University of London. Part of that degree, excellent degree, was to do a final project. And pretty much as soon as I got accepted on the course, I knew what the structure of the course would be. I started planning to write a book because for the first time in a really long time, I was going to have not just the time, but the incentive to do a major piece of work. And I thought that this would be a really satisfying project to work on, and I could bring all of these different strands of my life together into this one thing. And
strands of your life.
It carries on. But I was saying to the tutors on the course, because they were saying, "Oh, what's everyone going to do for the final project?" And I said, "Well, I think I might write a book, having been writing for months already on this thing." Yeah. And they said, "No, you're crazy. Don't do that. No one. That's too big a project for what we're asking people to do." And I said, "No, I think I want to do it."
Don't worry, guys, I got it.
That's the worst thing you can ever say to somebody, though. It's like, don't do that. It's because most people are going, "Well, no, I can do that. That's what I do."
And they said, "Well, how long a book are we talking here?" And I said, "I don't know, around 180 pages." And they're like, "No, that's what are you doing? Don't do that to yourself." And I said, "No, I genuinely think I can manage that. I've got a plan." And they said, "Well, no, you're absolutely nuts." But the last person to try writing a book, not just did it, but got the award for best achievement in their year group that year. So, if you do, then it's a huge thing. Mm-hmm. So I did, and I got the same prize too. So there you go. It all kind of worked out.
Yeah.
But the version that I submitted for that final project was kind of a sort of an embryo of the book that about 2,000 people in the world now have a copy of. Mm-hmm. the concept was there. A lot of the photography was coming along. A lot of the text was coming along. The general format of the book and everything. And that's what I presented to the good people at Chronocopia Publishing at the beginning of September in 2023. And they very quickly responded to say that they were interested, that they wanted to work with me and to really develop this project, which was just a dream come true, because I thought, this is such a niche project. Who's going to want to do this? Turns out these guys did. But over the next year, we tore it up, down, and built it right back up again, bigger, better, stronger than it was before. We clarified its audience. We got a little bit, because we had then time, because what I did, I was able to do basically in a calendar year. With that further time, we used every opportunity to improve the content of the book. So pleased that we did that. It was a huge amount of work, and I was doing this around working full time at the museum. So it really took over a large part of my life at that point. Which, I loved every minute of it. And working with Daniel Serra, my editor, was just a dream come true. We were such a team. And he was great because he's not a fiber artist. That's not what he does, but he is an archaeologist, an experimental archaeologist. And him not being a textile guy was perfect, because I couldn't ever slip anything past him, because he couldn't supply from his own knowledge something that I'd accidentally left out in an explanation or an instruction or something like that. So, every time I would do that, he'd go, I don't understand what you mean when you say this. And
which would then increase the accessibility of the text for
Exactly. Yeah. So it was really, really purposeful and useful to have that working partnership behind this book, because I think it's led to a stronger product.
That's so important to have. And I guess in a way I can relax. I feel like I've been doing that for the podcast for so many episodes, of being the person who, even now, I should know stuff, but I just forget it so fast that I'm still in that role of, what's that again? Can you please tell me that? But it's that bridge between the academic and the everyday person, or the everyday, the reader, because it does get lost. And, I joke about forgetting things. And I catch myself having, because I do still go in, again, the Facebook groups, and I go in there, and I even catch myself with things that I've heard so many times on the podcast and things I've learned, forgetting that most people just don't know this offhand. So I guess I'm kind of in that middle world where I really appreciate that thing of where you need to have that step, and that's so important. And 100%, it reads to an audience who doesn't know textile craft, and that's me. I don't know textile craft, but I got, for me, everything was explained. It was all there. I could, get through it, understand it, and that's, maybe if you didn't have that gap, maybe there were some things that I'd have been like, I don't really understand what that is.
Yeah, there are so many terms or ideas that are very specific to textile craft, where you have no chance of supplying it for yourself if you don't know it. That's why it was so important for us to include a really extensive glossary in the back of the book, for example.
Just to give I love me a good glossary.
Love a glossary, love one. But I would say about what I wanted to achieve with my life is if I could be as skilled as the least skilled person in the Bronze Age, I would be happy, because there is such an incredible level of skill and knowledge that our ancestors possessed across the globe, not just specific to the cultures that are under particular scrutiny in this book, but globally. Things that, lessons from the past that we shouldn't forget. Traditional knowledge and skills that I think can still very much benefit us today. And I think if people get one thing from reading this book, it's improved appreciation for the skill of people living that long ago, that we weren't cave people. just ripping skins off of people and animals, and draping ourselves in bloodied pelts and bashing each other over the head. There was so much more finesse to life, so much more very recognizable human activity occurring that far in the past. I mean, we were making sewing thread and sewing with eyed needles when we were Neanderthals.
Yep.
We were engaged in textile craft before we were humans in the modern scientific sense of the term.
Yep.
And so that means that there's something very deep inside all of us, I think, that will recognize these skills almost on an instinctual level. For me, spinning really itches a part of my brain that has been developing over thousands and thousands of years of being used to that kind of activity. I cover in the book the amazing finds at Must Farm, which is perhaps the most exciting bit of discovery in certainly in this country in the last 20 years, where linen textile so fine as to be up to 30 threads per centimeters width of fabric. And when you really try to visualize that, if you have a linen shirt, that's probably not going to be finer than that today. It was the finest linen being produced anywhere in Europe at the time, equal to the finest linen being produced. And this is Bronze Age, in the middle of the Cambridgeshire Fens. This was not a specialist center of production. This was a level of skill that existed in communities across Western, in all of Europe, really, at this time. Just to appreciate that, just to appreciate the skill and the humanity of the people who lived long ago would be my one goal that I'd like to identify for this book.
Oh, I vibe with that so much.
Thanks, Meg.
I have like the biggest pet peeve with like just the word primitive.
Oh gosh, no, that's loaded.
It sure is, but that's why I love stuff like this, Nicole. Like we talked about with the bog butter earlier, and this with like just the amount of tactile knowledge involved, meaning like knowledge that you have in your hands, knowledge that you can't necessarily write down or explain. You just know it, so you teach other people to do it by doing it with them. I love that so much.
Every single person in your community would know every single plant that they found growing in the environment around that community and precisely what you could use it for. It's that kind of land connectedness that I think we really do need to get back a little bit, to be so planted in our local environments. I think that's how you care about them, is to know them.
Yep.
It's that safety blanket that I think modern people have, that we can, we can Google anything, we can check things, that we don't need to be able to grow our own plants, grow our own vegetables. We're very much able to go to the supermarket and get anything we need. We can order on Amazon and have a new t-shirt or pretty much anything off Amazon at your house the next day. And I think that gives people today some level of almost superiority and a thought that they're smarter than people from the past, because maybe technically we know more, we hold more knowledge about different things, and we have a whole universe of knowledge at our fingertips through our phones. But I would say you could definitely argue that it's a more it depends how you define it, but I would say a more useless knowledge we have today if, say, you stripped the world back to its core. If you took if the electricity went down, or I don't know, whatever happened, and suddenly the world we find ourselves in today disappears, and the jobs that people live in, they work at banks or they answer phones for a living, all those things disappeared, we'd be pretty stupid, because there would be a lot of those basic skills that people just don't have. Most people probably wouldn't know how to plant potatoes or strawberries or fruit, or most people wouldn't have a clue how to make their own clothing. And I'm not saying we all need to know how to do every one of those things, but maybe have a more of an understanding of the difficulty that it takes to do those things, and the respect that it's just a different type of knowledge. Those people were incredibly smart in their own way, and they had a vast knowledge of their environment. It just wasn't maybe the same
Oh,
that
absolutely
we
right.
have.
No, I mean, I think what we as people do is we're immensely adaptable, aren't we? We focus our attention, we focus our energy on developing the skills that allow us to thrive in the environment that we find ourselves in. So for us, it's communication, it's social skills, it's technological skills. It's how do I access the things that I need in the networks that I find myself embedded in, and we're immensely good at navigating the world. Well, I don't find myself always excellent at navigating the world that I find myself in, but
sure,
me neither,
either, but
it's
me
one
neither
of
when it
those
comes to
things.
Facebook groups.
That's another thing entirely. But that same plastic sort of survival-oriented brain that causes us in our society to focus on the things that we focus on, to gain pleasure from the things that we find pleasurable, or to prioritize what we find ourselves prioritizing. That is exactly the same brain that, given the environment of a prehistoric upbringing, we would put to very, very different ends, very, very different means. If a Bronze Age person were born today, they would be indistinguishable from us because they would be using that same brain to live in our society, to live today.
Yeah. I think that's super duper interesting. I also, just to kind of touch on both a little bit what you've both just said, is that I think it's interesting how I might be digging myself into a philosophical hole, so just bear with me for a second.
We got shovels, we can get you out of it.
Great. I think you bring up a really interesting point, Dan, when you said that we know more today, because I am not sure whether or not that is the case. I would argue that our variety of knowledge, sure, is far greater. We all get like an intro into a lot of different topics that how would they have access to that type of, how would they know about like the solar system in the Bronze Age in the same way that we do? But I'm not saying you're wrong, Dan. I'm saying
no, I know where you're going, and I completely agree.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of a modern fallacy in the way that we kind of prop ourselves up and thinking that we know so much more today, which sure, our breadth of knowledge sure has increased because we have had the opportunity to have people who can be highly specialized within different fields.
Very true.
To gain that knowledge. But at the same time, if you put it on like a kind of conceptual weighted scale, I don't know whether the weight of the amount of knowledge that we have is good. Do you know what I'm saying?
If you weigh your brain.
Yeah, if you weigh your brain. Because I think that the amount of knowledge people would have had about their surroundings, about the people who surrounded them, about everything that they did.
I think just memory as well.
I don't know. I'm not sure I'm convinced that we know more today, but I do think that we have, like each individual person, I mean. As a society, sure. But I feel like our access to a greater variety of information is there. But maybe our like deep understanding of everything surrounding us and how to make sure that we don't die next time it gets really hot or really cold just based off of the items surrounding us perhaps is not the same.
It's prioritization. It's about the direct use of that knowledge. Like, I'm not entirely sure if my intense, knowledge of the back catalog of X-Files episodes is necessarily going to help me.
You never know when that might get you out of a pickle.
You never know.
I'm also not convinced whether or not my extensive knowledge of late 90s, early 2000s pop songs will help me out in that situation.
Pub quiz situation. Guaranteed wins. But it's interesting, isn't it? I think a part of our sort of anxiety of modern life is trying to hold so much in our heads all the time, to constantly be using our brains in a certain way, to be constantly up to date in our social lives, looking at the news, making sure that nothing is passing by us, that there is, the world is constantly in motion,
that
and we're
fear of
expected to
missing
keep up.
things.
Oh, missing out, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to feed the beast on the social media. You got to be doing all this all the time. There's no chance to sit and absorb and reflect and process and all of those really, really, really healthy brain things that we need to do.
Yeah.
And so, we're like engines sort of racing ourselves a little bit sometimes. And I think it's a way of using the mind that would be very alien to the past as well. I think people lived a far more seasonal life. So at certain times of the year, you would focus on certain kinds of activities. You would be preparing for the next phase, but that next phase would perhaps bring with it the chance to rest or to focus on other activities. A change is as good as a rest kind of thing. I'm not saying that they sat around doing nothing. People simply would not have survived if any person in that community didn't contribute in some way. And I say that, with the full caveat that people are also really, really good at taking care of perhaps less able people in their community, people who were young or aged or who suffered illness, were taken care of in their community. And that shows a level of civilization, I think, really, in the sort of classic sense. But where was I going with this? This idea of using your time differently, and in a cyclical and seasonal way, with a cyclical seasonal perspective, is such a healthy human way to live. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lesson that we can take from the past as well.
Yeah, I really love that. I love that a lot.
I feel like I heard somewhere recently, and it could have been on a very popular TV show, so I might be just completely stealing this.
Oh, I'm excited.
I can't remember where this came from. No, it's not actually a bad thing. About how when you have a group of people I can't remember the numbers, so bear with you. You're just going to have to imagine those. When you have a group of a community up to a certain amount of people, everybody chips in and looks after each other and is more communal. They will, they'll look after the kids, they'll help, they'll give things. But once that gets past a certain size, people then start to become more selfish. And whether it's because you can hide in it and it's more like take. So it's more of a like the community is so big that maybe you don't stand out anymore as an individual. There are so many people, then people will become selfish and they'll act in a more selfish manner and things will be about themselves rather than community based. And I can't remember where I saw it because I would like to read more into it. It was probably on a TV show.
No, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I've heard the same thing where it was essentially what I can remember from the argument isn't just that people then automatically become selfish, but it's something about the fact that when a population or a group of people exceeds a certain size, the well-being of that community is harder to see as being reliant on your particular effort. And it's hard to kind of keep track of everyone. Not that you have to keep track of every single individual, but like your sense of community might be harder to find because the group is so vast now.
So you're navigating systems.
Yeah, you're navigating systems instead of just interpersonal relationships. Yeah,
it's almost. I guess it's kind of like that analogy. Where is analogy the right word? I don't know. Maybe I'm going to go with it. Where if you have 100 people doing a tug of war on each side, it's not. It doesn't equate to 100 people pulling. It's something like if you had. Is it 100 or maybe it's 10? So it's more simple numbers to make the point I'm trying to make. I can't remember the exact numbers. If you have like one person pulling and one person pulling, it equates to X amount of power. If you have 10 people, it doesn't equate to 10 times that power because as soon as you're in a group, a few of those people feel like, oh, I don't have to pull as hard or I don't have to do as much.
Strength in numbers.
Yeah, so it kind of, it comes down a little bit on the amount of force exerted. And it's that similar thing that once it gets bigger, everybody thinks, well, I can maybe just hide here. Or I can just skim a little bit off the top. It's not going to be, that little bit's not going to be noticed. It's not going to be noticed if I don't do this job today because so many other people are doing their things and nobody is probably really checking it. Kind of like the NHS, how we have too many people, too many managers, and it doesn't really control itself very well. That's my little dig at how the NHS is run. I love the NHS, I think it's a fantastic thing, but there's a lot of that going on.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think you might be right, Dan. In some regards, the idea of feeling unseen or lost inside something that's so much bigger than yourself, can certainly lead to a lot of just personal unwellness, I think, as well. Just if you're losing connection with people as well as the place that you're living in, we could go down a very dark rabbit hole if we carried on here. I'll just draw attention to a comment that I'm seeing here on the side about who was it who said that humanity really began when people took care of someone who had a broken leg. Margrethe Mead, the famous anthropologist, referred to a healed femur as her ideal example of when people were exhibiting, I suppose, civility in the past, that a person's worth was not just seen as the work that they could contribute to a society, but something far more profound, the human connection, the love, the concern, the future potential of that person if they live. Thanks for, of course, all of the work that they probably did before that leg got broken, meant that care would necessarily then be given to that person in their time of need. Thank you for mentioning that. It's a fantastic example.
I love that example a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question that I'm going to save for the Q&A, but I'm going to tease it now. So don't answer this, but I'm going to save it anyway. It's one that I was pondering earlier, and it's just about not the seriousness of textile research, but I think the way that maybe it's not always thought of first and foremost as like an exciting topic when it probably should.
Too right, Dan. Too right.
So I'd like to get into that. We'll do that in the Q&A. But I do have one question, and so an hour and 5 minutes in, Nicole, what is bog fashion?
I don't even know, Dan.
But you wrote the book on it, though. I can see it right behind you.
Let's try and actually get there, maybe.
Bog Fashion is my book. It is part coffee table book. It is part project book, part recipe book. It's a book that has a few ways into a topic. It is my best attempt at taking what could be an incredibly dry academic topic, something where most available material in the topic is locked away in university libraries, archaeological reports, inaccessible resources. But this is really interesting stuff, and I think presented in the correct way, more people might be interested in it, as I am. And so this is my attempt to make the inaccessible accessible, not just by reading a whole bunch of stuff and presenting it in sort of a digestible format, but also to encourage people to learn by doing, because that's how I learn best, is by doing stuff, not just reading about how stitches were used in the past or that kind of thing, but actually to give people projects that they can work on at home. This book initially was so much bigger. But with just we didn't want to make it too expensive a book. Again, we want to make it accessible. So we're not going to have a £60 book. We're going to make something half that price and make it a little bit shorter so that we can reach more people with it.
That's such a genius decision. I love that.
Maybe we'll have an editor's choice version in future where we get all the really niche stuff in. The projects, there's 13 projects in this book. And they range from really, really simple clothing patterns and instructions for making clothing that is inspired by archaeological finds. There's a pattern in there for making your own pair of bog shoes, which is quite fun, for twisting wire into a couple of different kinds of fibula, which are basically the safety pins of the ancient world. Everybody had them, and they were wardrobe staples. They're so ingeniously made out of single pieces of wire. You don't need to be a particularly skilled metal worker to create these. Anyone with a bit of wire and a pair of pliers can get it done. So that, and I think that was quite key for choosing which patterns ended up in the book in the end, because there were a few qualities that the pattern had to have to achieve sort of the green tick, right? You're in the book. One was that it had to feel achievable, because it had to appeal to people with even quite basic skills or no skill at all. So every bit of the instruction that you would need to create something, what the stitches look like, how to do the stitching, that kind of thing, those instructions are in the book as well. There's a lot of people who are confident with sewing machine, but who start to tremble a little bit about the idea of hand sewing. So to actually present that as an option was important to us. The pieces had to be at least somewhat based on a historical find. They had to, at the same time, be wearable. I wasn't interested in giving people a series of things that you'd only ever want to wear, perhaps in a historical reenactment context.
Sure.
So while I present the Bronze Age string skirt in here as a educational point, you're not going to be wearing it so much. So each of the pieces, you could choose to wear them in a historical sort of living history context, or because the pieces are so simple, so adaptable, they also all needed to fit into a modern wardrobe if you wanted them to. Choose the fabric that you want to choose, make them really well, make them fit your body, and you could wear most of these pieces down the street and no one would know that you were wearing a pattern that was thousands of years old.
I love that.
So that was another one. I really wanted everything to feel accessible. They're all unisex pieces as well, and I think that was really important for me. And I know it's something
I'd wear the string skirt.
Okay.
I would love to see you wearing the string skirt.
A few more of these little whiskies, I might don a little string skirt.
Do it.
Okay.
Do
I
it.
have one silly comment to that, but also then like a more genuine. When you said that you would wear the string skirt, Dan, the first thing that popped into my mind was
A mental
Timon.
image of it. Oh, okay.
Was Timon in The Lion King with the hula?
Yeah. Why Timon? Oh, because actually, I was just saying, at least you need to. I don't know what. You know what? I thought you meant Pumbaa, the warhog, and I was like,
no.
I felt offended then, but I realized that Timon was actually the slimmer of the two. So you know what? I'm taking that, Max. Thank you.
You offended yourself by thinking.
I did, yeah. I automatically went to the fat one. All right.
Yeah, I didn't.
I'm joking.
But what I was gonna say, Nicole, before all of that was that I really appreciate that you have chosen unisex recipes, also because that is something that I find so frustrating when talking about fashion and textile crafts. And I think we touched on this in the last episode we did together too, but how it's so furiously and almost like impossible to separate. Like it's so gendered the way that we talk about it, like just how we talk about the way things are made, but also what was for whom. And it's like we don't even know that much about gender in the past, but for some reason we still can't get out of like the for him and for her sections of H&M in our heads, the way we talk about fashion back in the day.
It's so true. And I mean, I'm not going to say that there was no differentiation. Because of course there was.
And I'm not saying that either, by the way.
Have different bodies, and
absolutely,
and a woman's body quite often will change in certain ways over the course of her life that a man's will not. Which translates into the clothing and how it's pleated and folded and gathered in order to continue to serve her best over the course of her lifetime. But at the same time, the primary purpose of clothing, it would seem, certainly in the Bronze Age and the early Iron Age, was to be practical, ease of motion, hard-wearing, weather-appropriate garments that would allow you to do the things in your life that you needed to do to succeed. No one was wearing trousers in Western Europe and in Northern Europe before horses really kind of took over as the mode of transport, when maybe you do want to be wearing something between yourself and the horse. I don't know.
Maybe.
Which isn't to say that people weren't riding horses before the invention, but you can see why. When someone came up with this brilliant idea, it kind of spread quite quickly, quite well.
Adds a new element to the whole riding bareback situation.
It so does. Oh my!
Yeah, it
Can you
does.
imagine?
I would be. Would they have had saddles? Would saddles have been a thing? Or was he just? I was going to say balls to horse then.
We are just peaking this episode.
Oh, this is excellent.
Yeah.
This is excellent.
But mind the phrase. Yeah, would they have had saddles, or would they have just
That's
been
a really good question, and I think it's really important that I'm honest and to say I have no idea. Equestrian history just isn't my thing. But I would imagine that it wouldn't have taken very long to realize that throwing a sheepskin or something over there is not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But the question of gender is a really interesting one, actually. I think one of my favorite bog bodies of the ancient world is the Margrethe burial, which isn't one that gets mentioned terribly often, largely because the clothing remains are not on display. They weren't very well preserved. But initially, when she was discovered in 1817, the body was discovered, and the finder's initial thought, because of the bone structure of the individual, was that it was a woman. Very, fine features, slender bones, things like this. And the bones were in such terrifically terrible condition that they just crumbled as the excavation went on, and they were not recovered at all. So no bone, unfortunately, remains for us to study today. But the body was wearing clothing, and the initial thought that it was a woman was then dismissed because it was wearing trousers, which is a hilarious idea, really.
It is actually hilarious.
Let's allow for the fact that this person could have been a man or a woman, and we will never know, and therefore no judgment can be made. But a tiny piece of my little heart wants to think that it indeed was a woman who just happened to be in a really comfortable sleeveless tunic and short trousers when she was buried, because that's what she lived in. So that's what they buried her in as well.
It's such an interesting topic, because even... I have to out myself here, I guess, to a degree, that even today in my own kind of just like male universe, I suppose, that as soon as I think back of the past, I think of, men would have wore trousers, women would have wore dresses. The only men that wore like a skirt would have been the Irish and the Scottish, because I've been told that. And other than that, that's just kind of where my mind goes, because that's just, I don't know any different. And I guess it kind of touches on that topic that I want to chat about in the Q&A of why maybe things aren't taken, not, like I said, I don't want to say not serious, but not as spread maybe as wide as if someone found a sword, it's fucking everywhere, isn't it? It doesn't maybe get the same, even though it's rarer to find maybe fabric.
Maybe we should start. Maybe we should start like rickrolling people when it comes to like archaeological finds. Trick them into articles by thinking it's a sword, and then it's like, oh no, actually it's this awesome textile find. But would you have clicked on this if that's what you thought it was?
Yeah.
No, that's the thing, isn't it? I think the stone, the bronze, the Iron Age. These are eras that were initially named after, first the stone, and then the metals that were found most commonly in a grave context for those periods, and so they were named after those metals. But it's not just my argument; it's the argument of many textile researchers, as you might guess, that actually it's developments in textile technology that could more fully and accurately describe developments in societies through those times. But textiles survive so rarely that there isn't the vastness of evidence available to make a really clear catalogable timeline of precisely what's going on where. There's huge gaps and a lot of conjecture, a lot of best guesses as to what people were doing to clothe themselves in all of these periods. That, naturally we would use pottery, naturally we would use coinage, we would use metals, because that's what does survive. So we can say with more confidence what was going on in that particular realm or those particular technologies than we can with textiles, despite the fact that often in a grave, the textiles that went in with that person would have been the most expensive or the dearest goods being buried with that person, but also their most clear, the representative of their status in society, their age, their occupation. Those would have been key to identifying that person, not only for the community putting them into the ground, but also, depending on their cosmology, what would have identified that person going into the next. So even if the person had nothing else, no grave goods to speak of, no metals at all, or something, or very, very few, they would have been wearing, or they would have been buried with something, even if it was a simple shroud, even if it was just like the Ralstone textile to wrap the body in, to lay that person to rest under a bit of cloth. That was enough as a grave offering in many cases.
I'm trying really hard not to get further into that question. I wanted
We'll
to
get
say
there. We'll get there. Don't worry.
I think in most areas, scarcity would equal value. Across pretty much everything in life, the more scarce something is, the more valuable it is. But again, textiles are the most scarce material that we have from finds, but yet I feel like they're commonly overlooked. But we'll save that and get into.
We will.
Maybe why that is. So join the Patreon, everyone. Patreon.com/Nordic Mythology
Nicely
podcast.
done. Nicely done.
But okay, we spoke. You touched on Bog Fashion when it comes to the book, your book. But what is Bog Fashion
as a concept?
Yeah, like what the book is based on.
What's it based on? Yeah,
is that kind of? I know it's not called Bog Fashion, but I guess that bog textile finds archaeologically.
I had one of my viral reels that I put out a couple of years ago. I had this devastating comment left, and it was just 4 words: not fashion, just clothes. I thought, ooh, now we're getting into it. And I did say,
Michelle Visage from RuPaul's Drag Race.
Clarify,
what the hell?
because I'm so interested in this concept.
Also, how the fuck do they know? Yeah. They don't know. I just wanted to say something.
But it made me want to start to justify the choice of the word fashion. What is that?
Yeah.
That is a stylist. It's a stylistic choice. It's fashion is how we represent ourselves. It's how we want to portray ourselves in the world. It's how we respond to the influences that we see around us, or our desire potentially to do something different, to stand out, to allow clothing to represent more than just how we cover our nakedness and hide from the weather. And I think in all of those respects, the textile remains that we find in the archaeological context are representative of fashion, and not just something we've wrapped around ourselves because we had no other choice. Surely there are people in history who did and had to survive in an incredibly basic way. It was a matter of survival what they wore. But come on, let's be honest. The graves that we're most commonly finding, because a huge amount of work was put into sending them off well, perhaps because they were put inside an oak coffin, which was a huge amount of work for a community to do to produce that kind of a burial. Yep. The goods that they went in with, all this kind of stuff. These are people who had potentially some special status in their community. And so what they were wearing then becomes representative of people of that status in that community. And our finds are so rare that we have an overrepresentation of people who enjoyed a certain status in their community. Unfortunately, which is not to say all. I was doing some interesting work recently on what is arguably a more common person who went into a bog at the end of the Bronze Age. But we can get into that more later if we wish. But the inspiration for the book, to answer your question, Dan, is the textiles that we find in the context of graves and deposits into bogs, peat bogs, fenland, because these acidic, anaerobic environments, lightless environments, best preserve certain kinds of textile material that people use to clothe themselves with. So it's the most common landscape environment in Northern and Western Europe. So, there's plenty of opportunity to discover clothing that has gone into it. Certainly more went into the ground than we have discovered, that we've had the opportunity to discover. But generally speaking, wool clothing, leather finds, skin finds, these are the materials that survive in a bog because those fibers are preserved in a peaty context, in a way that something like linen, for example, just doesn't. Linen goes into a bog and it becomes peat because it is plant fiber. So huge amounts of textile tradition is lost to us because the evidence simply doesn't survive to the present day. We need a very, very, very different kind of environment to preserve that kind of fabric, which is why the most of it from that long ago is coming from much further south, much further east, because the dry, hot environment of, say, an Egyptian burial, for example, will better preserve that linen than what we can hope to achieve here in soggy Europe.
What about ice?
Oh, certainly. No, that's an interesting one as well. I think ice presents a lot of its own problems. And we've had some really beautiful examples of clothing, both linen and wool, be preserved in ice. There's some amazing examples from Norway. But again, they tend to be chewed apart by contact with the ice. So it's a little bit of a grinder. So you don't necessarily achieve, except in very sort of special circumstances, good preservation in an ice environment. Okay. But maybe that's where I need to take my research next. I'm not as familiar with ice finds as I am with bog finds.
I mean, the thing is that like all of our little ice caps and everything are, currently melting away. So there's a lot of
coming up.
There's a lot of glacial archaeology going on in Norway. So I think if you keep at it, you're gonna have enough stuff for a glacier fashioner or something.
Honestly, it's amazing.
Have you seen the Secrets of the Ice?
Yeah.
Instagram. Obviously, we've had Julian Post Melby on here a couple of times. And I would love to have him on again, actually. But yeah, maybe there could be some conversation between the two and see, because it seems like there could be some stuff found there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very sorry that we're able to discover things for the reasons we're able to discover them. Climate change is also affecting our peatlands quite terribly as well, because things need to stay wet to be preserved, where you've got falling water tables, where you've got drought, where you've got wildfire moving underground as well as over it. There's no chance. That is actually
terrifying. Wildfires moving underground.
If you think about a fire in a coal mine, you've got a really similar situation going on here. It's just why when peatlands go up, when moors go up, it's devastating and very difficult to suppress, because peat is a natural fuel. That's why we have had so many discoveries, especially in the 19th century, early 20th century, when peat was a very poor but cheap and locally available fuel for people. Going out into peat bogs and digging for fuel was how a lot of these things have been discovered. And because the work was done by hand, people were able to find things before they destroyed them. If you go into a modern setting with a bit of modern farm machinery, for example, you are going to churn through that grave long before you have the opportunity to realize what you've just done. So, there's a reason why we're not finding as much today as what did happen in the 19th century, early 20th century.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm thinking like, what's terrible about just thinking about Secrets of the Ice? It's like, yeah, I'm also extremely sorry that we are able to find these things, because I would like for stuff not to melt. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
but
let's slow that down.
Yeah, let's slow that down. But the fact is that it is melting.
Yeah.
So when it is melting, I am so grateful that we have a project like that and projects like yours that deep dive into stuff.
Yeah, I would love to be the kind of person in a position to make discoveries, to do the archaeology myself, to make amazing discoveries. That's not on the cards for me. But my role in this whole world is different. I am a communicator. That's what I do. I stand myself on the shoulders of giants, taking the amazing work done by colleagues in archaeology who've just produce the most wonderful data that opens up the window to this whole world. But then I have the opportunity to take it and to make people care about this stuff, which is also, Dan, I think, leading dangerously towards the question you want to ask a little bit later.
I was actually thinking that's how I feel too, Nicole, that I stand on the shoulder of all these giant scholars that come on the podcast and try and make it more accessible.
No, I also very much relate to that, of being like, yeah, communication is the thing that I'm doing. And for that communication to even take place, we need the people who do the excavations and write the reports.
Totally different skill sets, absolutely vital to keeping history alive for people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. On that note, let's wrap up.
Oh my.
We've done an hour and 28, but really we've been here for nearly 2.5 hours because we had the technical issues at the start. So I don't want to eat into your Sunday too much more than we already have.
Don't worry, I've been looking forward to this all week.
Yeah, this has been. Oh, that's very sweet of you. Thank you. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I knew it would be after the first episode that we would have fun. It's been silly, it's been informational, it's the perfect kind of episode for me, and I'm sure I speak for Mags as well, when we get to have somebody that just speaks but also lets us have fun, so like we can poke fun at each other, we can have a laugh. It's
genuinely, I'm already brainstorming like, we need to have Nicole back, so we just need to find another topic.
Well, we actually could talk about the contents of the books. We just didn't do that today at all. So honestly, we probably could. We probably could just make a whole episode where we actually do what we probably should have done today.
I'm in. Let's do it.
We could just call it like Bog Fashion, the episode we should have made or something.
Yep. What Bog Fashion actually is.
Yeah, you know what? I've had a lot of fun, but I would it does sound so silly, but I would actually like to book you to come back on and we'll maybe get into a few examples from the book. I'll make a list, or we can just pick as we go through, but get into that nitty gritty about what each one is, what we can learn from it, and that kind of stuff. Because
sounds fun.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun today. I had a not a shitty day, but a stressful day. So this was exactly what I needed, barring the first hour of technical issues. But
you're so kind not to point out that it was my fault the entire time that we were delayed for an hour.
But here's the thing, though. It wasn't your fault. None of us knew. It was nobody's fault.
I pressed the wrong button. Okay.
But you know what? But you know what? Here, I would also say this is genuinely not to kind of make it sound less of a thing, but like I would genuinely say that this is on Riverside for being like, if you are wearing a headset with like an integrated mic, you do not click this button.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's on them.
Right. But wouldn't that be good? Just a little warning box.
Yeah,
because I would also do exactly what you did.
Mean.
I agree. If I hadn't have been so smart and technologically savvy, we may not have been able to do
Hell
this.
yes, Dan.
But we got there. We got there. Nicole, where can people find you? Where can people? Obviously, the book's sold out. I assume it's going to a second print.
Back. Yeah, it's coming
Where
back
can people
real
get it?
soon. Even with a couple of typos fixed, so we're loving the opportunity to put out a second edition of the book. For all of the updates, really, I'm not a social media person at all. I really try and avoid it as much as I can in my life. But the one
you have such a big following on social media,
the thing, which is hilarious to me. But that is the one place where I do update on a very regular basis. Is Instagram. Grounded_history is my handle on there. For book updates, as soon as I know them, I put them on there. So that's really handy for people if they just want to check on availability, who's got it, where it is, that kind of thing. And I really do enjoy as well reposting when our retail partners put out a reel or something like that to drum up a little business for themselves. So that's a really good place. And I am doing lots of new research. Just today I dropped a reel about a really big piece of research I've been involved in recently. I'm taking a short break from my day job at the museum for the next few months so that I can focus on research and writing and producing talks and doing appearances, going to history festivals and that kind of thing.
Oh, wow, nice.
I've got other podcasts that I'm doing. I'll be on a YouTube channel later in the summer as well. Really looking forward to that. But the Ancient Technology Centre in the UK is an amazing place where people go to do experimental archaeology and learning about the past. And they have a heritage textile weekend, courtesy of Castle Hill Heritage Group, that is going to be happening on the 7th and 8th of June. So that's the first weekend in June. I'm presenting on this brand new research on the Saturday evening as a standalone talk. It will be filmed, and at some point in the future, it will become available for people to see. But for the moment, if you're interested in taking a look at that and joining for an amazing panel of textile prehistorians who know everything you could possibly want to know, and who are just joyful in their teaching method as well. There's a whole panel of them presenting over the course of that weekend at the Ancient Technology Centre, and I would highly recommend buying tickets to that if you're in the area and can come and join. I know they still have ticket availability, and they'd love to see more people come along to that. So that would be the next thing. And after that, Chalk Valley is the next big one. A few other little bits and pieces in between, but the Chalk Valley History Festival, 23rd to the 29th of June. I'll be there all week, so people should come along and say hi. We'll even have books for sale.
I love that you have so much going on now.
There's so much going on. It's
good.
Insane.
Good.
It's wonderful.
I did it. I'm not even going to say that. Doesn't matter.
Dan censoring himself in real time.
Love that. Love that.
No, I was just going to make a joke. I was going to say, did it all kick off after your last appearance on here? I was just making a joke.
It was ramping up, Dan. It certainly was, and it was. It didn't hurt things one bit.
No, we have to do this again when we can get into the nitty-gritty. But we'll keep the silliness, but we'll get into the actual finds, what we can learn from them, the new finds. I really look forward to that. Like I said, this one's been a lot of fun. Yay. And like I say, a bit of therapy for me is probably what I needed today.
Fantastic.
But let's get into the Q&A.
Do you want to sign off with our social media handles, Dan, before we close off?
No, I was just trying to gently plug to say that I'm super excited to actually get into why maybe textiles aren't as popular.
Yes.
Because I think that'll be actually a really good conversation.
I have a feeling that both Nicole and I have strong opinions about this.
Maybe. It's possible.
Perhaps.
I agree. So that's why I tried to.
Potentially.
What's really great, folks, is that we haven't even compared notes. So
No,
yeah,
not at
let's
all.
see what happens. Let's see
Nicole
what
and I
happens.
have just had a brief conversation about how we were both excited about this episode, and that's it.
That's literally it.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to that, and we'll see why you both think that reason is. Mags, where can people find you?
When I do post on social media, that's usually on Instagram, which is Archeomags with a K.
Perfect. And then for me, it's Daniel_Farrand1 at Horns of Odin for the business, Nordic Mythology podcast across the board. And I think that's about it.